Hey there, I'm Jody Vance.
I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for...
UnSpun.
That's my favorite. That's like we're 6 months in, buddy. 6 months.
I'm losing my mind again.
I love it.
Yes.
Well, you got
great. 6 months. Happy 6 month anniversary, everybody. Where's the cake? No cake?
Oh.
Oh well.
There's no cake.
You know, my son has his first year anniversary with his girlfriend, and he had his 6 month one, and his 3 month one, and his 9 month. I was like,
I love that.
The fact that he remembers when I mean, I don't remember my date.
It's
my first
sweet.
date with Amanda. I think it was July. I'm gonna go for 14th.
Oh yeah? How many years ago? Way to bring it up and then dig yourself a hole. Let's talk about that. Oh boy, so much to cover. And don't worry, if you've been talking about us on social media, whether it's on the Facebook page,
on the Facebook,
or on the Twitter, at George _Affleck. So I've got a hashtag now that's George _. So if ever you want to pay attention, do that. We'll be mentioning all of the people who have sort of chimed in a little later on in the podcast. But let's start with the things that are top of mind and very topical. Municipal politics taking center stage as we head into episode 26 of UnSpun. Colleen Hardwick.
Yeah.
MPA, City
MPA
Councillor.
Councillor, yeah, one of 5.
Having somewhat of a quiet protest.
That's the headline in the Vancouver Sun today. She came out very clearly in a in a conversation after a council meeting with Dan Fomano from the Sun, talking about why she voted against a report that came regarding reconciliation.
And she was...
So she came out against this report, the only one to vote against this report, and very unusual because it's one of those issues. Reconciliation is very sensitive. We had the first year of reconciliation when I was there. At that time, it was I think it was a federal program. It was 1 year, and the city's engaged with it. Or I don't remember the exact details. And we did it for 2 years, and then I think it was Andrew Reimer brought in reconciliation basically forever in Vancouver, and there is, of course, funding for all of this and a whole staff dedicated to this at City Hall now. And so her argument was, which is something I heard a lot of, and I think we hear a lot of, is priorities at City Hall. And she feels that this is not, when does reconciliation end? When are we reconciled? Is her argument, and it's a good question. I would say that 100 years of not being reconciled might take a little longer than a couple of years.
I think you're right on that one. I think we got a long way to go.
And there are other things at City Hall and she brought that up too. The other stuff that they're not prioritizing properly.
She's not anti-reconciliation.
No, I don't
she
think
just
so.
thinks that this is a misplaced priority given what other things should be on the docket.
That's what she said, but I'm pretty sure that people who are anti-reconciliation will be awesome. They'll be like, thank you, Colleen Hardwick. And you're seeing on Twitter and Facebook already people going, way to go, finally somebody's fighting for us.
Fighting for the entitled colonialist? Like that's going to piss off a lot of people.
There's another guy who did that. His name's Donald Trump.
And it worked for him.
It worked. And so there is a concern that, is this politically motivated? I don't, it's certainly...
Or is it fiscally motivated?
Well, yeah, and is that the same thing? For me, that's what my politics was all about fiscal restraint and being careful with our money. And
can I ask you a question about what the City of Reconciliation report might have in it? Is it about art? Is it about street signs and locales and honoring?
All that kind of stuff. And it changes all the time, and it's engaging in the communities. And
I think it's important.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. I really, as a parent, and this is just because believe me, I know it's only one taxpayer, and so it all comes from us. So when later in this podcast, when I bitch about something else costing too much, remind me that I'm actually already spending a bunch of that money on this. So I get that. I'm not trying to say, all of the things, but the lack of education on this topic, on the territory we call home, the lack of information about that for so many generations is now finally front and center enough that if you ask one of our 11-year-olds, they'll tell you way more about
Sure, and in the schools they say we acknowledge the First Nations who came before us and all that stuff. And
they draw and they learn and they understand more of what is a lost language and a lost art and reaffirm and confirm the history.
Sure.
Which I think is really key. But how deep into it does our city need to be?
City specifically, and what is the province doing? What is the federal government doing? They have their programs that are related to reconciliation. Obviously, a lot of the horrible things that happened nationally were through the federal government's programs.
No doubt.
But we have 3 First Nations groups in Vancouver. But it's this pendulum that you have to worry about, I think, in politics. And when you go too far one way, do you start really scaring the other people? And this is certainly what Donald Trump is doing. We went to 2 PC, now we're going to go crazy the other way. And so, is Colleen Hardwick feeding into that purposely, or is she just trying to be fiscally prudent?
Well, she's certainly started a conversation, so
she has, and
it'd be interesting to see the backlash from those who are on the other extreme.
She will get a beating from certainly social media. You can see it already. A lot of the Vision people that were out there, I haven't seen them in a while on social media. They're back. They're back. They're out there and they're attacking her. Oh, yeah, they follow me sometimes, but they now, comparatively, I might be moderate. Okay,
I want to talk extremes again. The affordable housing discussion, also City Hall, that second Shaughnessy development. What is it off Granville Street?
Yes, further down in Granville,
near the hospice,
which Colleen voted against. So,
because it's
amongst other things,
density issues,
and she's
putting in the townhouses, and so now there's okay, fine, it's not going to be townhouses, it's going to be a mansion, and that's a great headline for those who are like, come on! I
know, we briefly talked about this last week.
Yes, we did.
And the fact that it failed, and the hospice next door were very vocal, the neighborhood was very vocal, the council was really torn, and literally by the political parties were voting all over the map, and it failed. So a couple of things are going on now. So the company that's was going to build this says, okay, fine, we'll build this. We'll build a giant mansion, 12,000 square
company, developer, same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people don't understand sometimes the developers are businesses, and they like to make profits, and they're not going to apologize for that. And most businesses like to make profits. I know that.
And we need housing. And guess who makes housing?
Yeah.
Developers.
So the question is, and certainly Michael Geller's been vocal about being supportive of them deciding not to do this. And you've got guys like Gordon Price who are saying not only on that project, others is like, what are you doing? Why are you saying no to this stuff? We have a policy in City Hall that Vision brought in. And my argument is the policy that they created was called MERPS. And it's great little MERPS. And it allows you to put this kind of density in places where you basically to usurp community plans. And it's a policy that exists, and it's existed for couple years now. In my mind, if this council has a real problem with this MERPS, they should reverse it and not have it then, because you're leading developers on. You're leading these companies who want to build housing, and it has to be a rental housing. That's part of the program. Entirely? Yeah, you can get this entirely. You have to get, you get this extra density. That's a big point that people lose, because we're so trained now that any development is going to, there'll be 300 units and 7 of them will be affordable rentals, and the rest will be what is affordable is always the question. But in this case, this is market rental, get rental built, get it built.
So this would have been all rental.
High-end rental, but rental. And there's the argument of the supply and demand. You get the top end, you get the low end. If you put more at the top end, even if they can't afford it, somebody can. That alleviates the stress at the bottom end.
Agreed.
So anyway, so now, but interestingly, the mayor was speaking to media. I forget who it was. I think it might have been Linda Steele at CKNW. Said, there are some councillors who are now regretting their decision because of what the guy's saying about, hey, I'll put a giant house there.
It was Linda's show.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call him on this. I would say, okay, if that's true, and you think you can get the 6 votes for this, he has the ability. The way it works in City Hall is you can, if you voted in favor of something, you can actually bring it back into some capacity. If it went into a public hearing, you can bring a motion forward to council saying, let's review this again, basically.
They could have a mulligan, they could do a do-over?
You can't say if you voted against it, you can't do that, but if you voted for it, it's a weird situation. It's a weird bylaw or policy in the Vancouver Charter. So if the mayor truly thinks that there's a vote to support this, then he should call for another public hearing, and he can do that. And I say, give it a shot if you're being truthful.
What's to lose, though?
This.
But if he
a lot of time. Another 400 people lined up at.
But on this particular topic, I bet you'd get 400 people in one press release.
Yeah, I mean, coming in favor of it, maybe. I don't know. I think that the developer, if he is serious about just building a single-family home, then fine. But if he's willing to go back and do something different, maybe there's a chance. But I don't know if bringing the same project, I really don't think that this council would support it. I really don't think they
Maybe
would.
a reconfiguration of the double-stacked townhomes in that slice beside the hospice that got everybody in an upper room in the first place. Maybe there's a way to do it that it isn't so invasive.
Yeah, he's going to own this rental building, so he has to make the money on it to pay
no
for
doubt.
it. So
And I agree with that.
He's done the math,
I
and he says the math doesn't work if I don't do it this way. And he did a lot of things that the staff asked him to do to present, so they could present to council for support. And all the things he did wasn't enough for the council. So.
Can we shift down to Broadway now?
Further down, talking about housing again. We'll drive a little further north on Broadway.
Hi, Jordan.
Granville, turn right.
Hi, Jordan Bateman.
Jordan.
Hi, McLean
Bateman. I will defend you a little bit, as requested on Twitter.
There you go. And McLean was like, I'm never so excited. It's like Christmas. Here comes the Smackdown. Do you want to know? Okay.
There's even calls for having a group, all four of us getting in a room together, but I don't know.
They said they bring drinks.
Technologically, I'm not sure.
They bring drinks.
I only have 2 mics.
That's right. Yeah. We don't like to share.
I don't know.
Okay, so just for those of you going, what are you talking about, Vance? Jordan Bateman and McLean Kay, so the editor-in-chief of the Orca, and Jordan Bateman, who's with the ICBA, do a BC Poly Hot Stove podcast, which is excellent. I really enjoy the podcast. And I do watch it, and every now and then I get my name drop.
Yes.
And on yesterday...
By the way, can I ask about, if you watch it, you see McLean with these giant...
Because he's in
like
the legislature.
I know, but those Mickey Mouse headphones, come on.
Hey, at least I got rid of the big white backdrop that used to be. Anyways, we digress.
Yes.
He just called you Mickey Mouse.
McLeany Mouse.
Ooh. Okay, that was pretty good. But going back to Jordan Bateman, because I adore Jordan Bateman, we spent a lot of time talking with each other when he was with the BC Taxpayers Federation. I would go to him for intel and information, fact check.
He was my nemesis, as I always said.
Right?
He and I were always, if you go to George, you go to Jordan about
I would get both
taxes.
Of you. But facts. I get the facts from Jordan Bateman. Well, yesterday he's given me grief. No end of grief on my opinion about West Broadway.
This was from our last week's episode where we had kind of a debate about...
Oh, we had a throwdown. It was great.
Yes, I think you made me cry.
No, I didn't. What we were talking about is a proposed rezoning of one space on West Broadway where the proposal is a 28-story building. And George and I were going back and forth on this topic prior to recording the podcast. And I said, why not 14 stories?
Which is what it's zoned for.
There you go, which I didn't know, because I'm just, the moderator, host of the brainiac over here that I'm pointing at George. But I drive down West Broadway to come to Curve Communications to do the podcast.
Plug.
Totally.
And so double whammy there. I got brains and a company.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But I drive down West Broadway, like all the way that the subway or the SkyTrain line will go, which was the density conversation is built around the transit piece. And I counted the tallest buildings, and the tallest buildings were between 5 and 7 stories, the tallest ones. So Jordan thought that I said that there should be no building on West Broadway higher than 5 stories. Not at all what I said, my friend. Not at all.
However,
just want to make my point. I was saying 14, and not just on one plot of land. I'm like 14 across the board.
So we argued about this in the fact that I think that Broadway is the perfect place for 26-story buildings. If not there, where in our city? Downtown's almost finished as far as zoning and height. Now we need to look at other areas in the city where we can get the density. We're going to have a train system there with millions of people going
across. Why aren't there 28-story buildings all up and down Cambie?
I believe Suzanne Anton argued for that along Cambie, and she put a motion in to say at that time, Envision said no, we want 6 stories along
right. So why
Cambie.
But why not 14? If we had 14-story buildings down Cambie and 14-story buildings down Granville Street and 14-story buildings down West Broadway, we would have the same density as having Burnaby plunked.
Sounds like Russia.
But Burnaby would plunk
Like,
Have you driven through Burnaby?
Yeah, but you're just boring, like all the same height. I mean, come on, just think about the.
They don't all have to be 14.
I love the view of our city. When I go to North Van, as a kid, when I grew up in North Van, my dad would actually take us down to the lawns. And I'm not saying the towers are for every neighborhood in the city. Before people started coming screaming at me, but we used to go down a Lonsdale. My dad would look at Vancouver and go, "Well, look at this beautiful." And this is like the '70s when there was like 8 tall buildings. Look at this beautiful city. Isn't it amazing? What a wonderful place we live in this, where it's located, and it's a jewel, and it looks like a jewel, and all that stuff, and these buildings in the middle of the mountains, and all that stuff. So,
I hate Trump Tower. I hate Shangri-La. I hate the Wall Center. I hate those big.
What?
I do. What? I love.
What? Not Trump Tower. That's a whole other issue. But
no, but I think that. But I don't hate Vancouver House. Weird.
Well,
because some architecture
that's the tallest of all of them, actually.
But Wall Center, remember when Wall Center was the tallest when it went up? Half of it's black glass.
Oh, that was you're gonna get me. That was a battle with Philip Owen and Peter Wall that continues to this day.
That drives me crazy. I love.
Well, it's not like that anymore, but because Vision let him put his black glass on there in the end, and his reflective mirrored glass. It was half. That was a compromise. Yeah. But he was apparently.
It looks like a lipstick.
They went to court. It was battle. Anyways, we're digressing again.
Okay. Anyways,
towers have a place. Where do we put them?
Not West Broadway. Not over 14. But 14 is a tower.
So
that's okay. You can totally have seething within. Let's talk about.
And I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying that this project 100%. I think we should have a process, and again, it's fitting into the same box that project up on Granville. It's the same MERPs that they're using to build this thing, and so you're going to have the same problem. 200-300 people are going to come and say this is outrageous. And as I said last week, I'll be interested to see how council handles this one, because it's not, you don't have the hospice next door, you don't have the first or second Shaughnessy people, you don't have, it's a different argument for people down there. It'll be a tougher one for them to make.
I live on a plot of land that used to have one huge character single family home. And now there are 6 units, and there are 18 of us living on that one plot of land, and it's done beautifully. Everybody's got a little bit of a yard or patio.
I can beat you on this.
Yeah, no, I know you can, but
I live where a gas station used to be, and there's 300 units and 500 people.
But I don't want to live there with my 3 dogs and my 11-year-old. I want to be able to
raise my kids and three
But we're different
kids
people.
I know, but
so
I'm
not
saying
everybody.
Don't be so anti-tower.
Actually, I was saying that I'm not anti-density.
Okay.
And I live in a space where I would welcome even taller buildings that are on the main street at the end of my street. They don't piss me off. The one that is that has been drawn up to go at Alma
the foot of Alma and Broadway,
which is really a beautiful, architecturally beautiful building to look at. Everybody around it is freaking out at the size and scale of it, because they're concerned that if that size and scale plunks at that point, it's just the first domino to fall, because everybody can point to that and say, well, look at that domino. Of course, this one needs to be bigger, so it'll go with that one. And
well, there's going to be a station there, so it makes sense.
I'm just saying there's a fear around it that is going to vastly and drastically change that neighborhood and that area. Not that it doesn't need absolute more density, but when you move into Yaletown, you do kind of expect to live in or around very tall condo buildings. I've always had an opportunity to live in the West End of Vancouver. I love the West End of Vancouver, but it was too tall building-y for me. It just was. I liked living in Kitsilano in a crappy little apartment rental there, instead of getting probably a better rental, a better space for my money if it wasn't a block from the beach. So anyway, we could go round and round and round, but I want to get to an update on the Surrey topic.
Oh, yes.
Because there's been big movement on what we talked about last week with regard to the municipal police force possibly replacing the RCMP. There's been a click.
It's something that the Sikh group came out in support of the mayor of Surrey to have its own police force, saying
from
that the
Temple
RCMP,
leaders.
Some Temple leaders. This is a significant move of support for the mayor in Surrey, McCallum, because he's done his report. He sent it to the Solicitor General Farnworth, and now it's in his hands, and that means it's in NDP's hands, and now it's become a political hot potato because of this. Because now I was thinking that this was, that you could, McCallum can probably just do high fives at this point because he did the SkyTrain and he did the police thing where he's saying, I've done everything I can do and now it's in the hands of the province. If they say no, well, I did what I could do. And so politically, he's achieved the two things he said he would do. And so that's a big deal. So, tell me another mayor in this, what has Kennedy Stewart achieved in his 8 months? We'll get
How many people?
There's 43 communication staff at City Hall, and I don't know what is going
on.
Anyways.
Oh, it's vodka this week. Oh, that was awesome. Nice one, Amanda.
Wow.
I like the fake it out.
So this creates a bit of a challenge because in an election, Surrey is an important
it got the NDP
region.
elected.
Yeah. So
provincially,
if they go push forward with a police or don't do a police force,
swing,
and they know that they have a couple of ridings they could lose because of that, that's a big problem and a great problem for the Liberals.
Or Green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay, whatever.
I had to put that in there.
Plug for the Green Party.
Nonpartisan program.
Did I ever say that?
No, you didn't.
Yes.
But we were discussing what you are.
What am I?
You're a fiscally responsible centrist.
Yes. I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
Isn't that what makes me?
Yes. I agree. Okay, so we're keeping our eye on what's happening with the RCMP.
Yeah, so that's going to be that's a real problem for the NDP, I think.
It absolutely could be because we still don't have Uber, and that's the same.
Don't get me going on that.
But it's the same area, right? It's the same swing riding is what I'm looking for, not area. It's the same swing riding that you have to have in order to become the Premier of British Columbia.
Absolutely, he needs it. Now, can we talk shit?
Let's do it! Oh my gosh. Do you want to bring it in?
You've got your article out this week, which in the middle, which talks about...
McLean K wanted to title the headline to be Van Shitty. And now he's really glad he didn't because it's getting retweeted by Andrew Scheer of the Federal Conservatives
you're
in both languages.
Supported by the Conservative Party.
I don't know how this at all plays into it, other than actually it's John Cooper, our collective good friend.
And I was really aggressive on this online. And it was
you and I, we can high five on it if it goes through.
Exactly, because this has been something, and people, well, what did you ever do when you were in council, George?
Shh. I hate that.
I tried, and I brought this up many times at budget conversations with staff, and they're always their argument as part of the operating capital was like,
Explain for those who are like, we don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. I thought you were the setup.
Okay, person. I will be. All right, my column this week in the Orca at theorca.ca. You can read it. It comes out on Wednesdays. It's called The Middle. I always try to find some middle ground. Well, this week, I'm frustrated that local beaches are being closed due to E. coli and fecal matter measurements that are not just a little bit over, but 4 times the limit and swim at your own risk or no swimming. They put up yellow caution tape across Sunset Beach yesterday. It was or on Canada Day, actually. Yeah. And it's just...
Welcome to the greenest city, everybody.
And that is exactly my point.
Whatever.
How do we have that? We're a nuclear-free zone. We're writing humongous letters to big oil to tell them to pay for climate, and we can't swim in our ocean.
It's wrong. And we have a plan. The basic problem is the sewage pipes we have are not 100% separated in the water. It's kind of complicated, but basically the poop in various forms gets stuck in our system because they're not separated. And so they're separating. They're trying to deal with this. Engineering is dealing with this. They have a plan. It'll be finished in 2050. And then we'll be able to, and I will be 86 years old, and I will be like, oh, finally I can go swimming in the beach. No. And so the argument that I made and have always made is that can we not do this faster? And so John Cooper, he says he's bringing a motion forward to Park Board because this is not a Park Board issue. It's a City Hall issue.
That's in my article. People jumped on John Cooper.
It goes into
do
the parks.
Your job.
It goes on to the beaches.
Not my job.
Yeah, and they're the ones who have to deal with it because it's literally in the beaches, and they're the ones who have to put the signs up. But it's a City Hall problem, and it's a question of priorities. And it goes back to what we were talking about with Colleen Hardwick and priorities, and that's the big thing that she talks about. It's something that I always talked about when I was in council. What are our priorities of the council in managing a city? I would say that this would be a top priority. I mean, of all the things.
It's what cities are supposed to. This is what
you've
mayors
got your roads,
and councils,
you got your
sanitation,
you got your water, and of course Metro,
sewage.
the regional body, fits into this and how the math works.
But this needs to be.
But drive the agenda. Come on, City of Vancouver, get on this.
I'm gonna give
get
away,
your shit together.
Get your shit together.
And send it to the sewer plant.
Right. And Victoria, we're looking at you too, because that sewer.
Victoria.
They're building at least, but 2050, too long. We're better than that. The technology's better than that. I will absolutely put up with whatever infrastructure sort of got to get around to make it a priority. And people are like, raise the property taxes to pay for it. And other people are, just throwing down these, well, now you're going to have to do this. And now
that will be their argument by staff. It's going to be very expensive, very expensive. I mean, okay, find something else to cut.
Find something else to cut, or maybe dip into all that flipping money laundering money that you made, the excess in the budget.
Yeah, well, you've got major surpluses every year. You've got a capital budget of over $1 billion for the next 4 years. Take some of that cash and redistribute it. I don't know, figure it out.
There's got to be a way.
Of course there's a way.
There's got to be a way.
So
and
I'm confident that John and then it will lead to a motion, I'm sure, from MPA at Council to push forward with this. It's got to be part of the operating budget and that capital budget coming up this year. They have to talk about it. They have to include something there. It's got to be a conversation. Now is the moment where they can insert it in the budget for next year. Let's get on it.
I believe in John. He is a gentleman, and he gets stuff done. He can even bloom plants that smell like shit. See what I did there? All the way around to the conservatory. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. Uncle Fester. We watched that flower bloom last year. Anyways, so keep us posted, John Cooper, on that.
So many shout-outs for John Cooper. We should send him an invoice.
We should. We'll send it on Curve Communication letterhead. Are we done here? No. Theorca.ca is the website, at the Orca BC on Twitter, at George_Affleck. Yeah, at Jody Vance. We got a lot of feedback in the last week. I'd like to a little shout out to Barbara May on Facebook.
Barbara May.
How'd I do, Barb?
Yeah, you got, well, you want me to do the last word? Okay, she was accusing you of last word issues.
Said I was cutting you off, interrupting you, and I always have to have the last word.
But you have to cut me off.
Amanda's like, yeah.
I must be cut off. I accept my cutting offness of me. And
fine. A little bit of context for George and I, when we started doing this podcast 26 weeks ago, that was sort of George said, can you set me up and then I can give you the thing and then you can transition to the next thing and I can and then we can go back and forth on topics. And I think each week we've had more of a... Well,
apparently you have opinions, which is bullshit. I'm the one with opinions here, not you.
That's it for us for this week on UnSpun.
Thanks. Last word. Got it. I got it.